Under the twin suns of Zentrix 7, a planet bathed in perpetual twilight, the human known as Callan stood frozen in disbelief. The alien queen's words still echoed in his mind like a haunting melody. "Only you may enter, human." Her voice had resonated through the grand hall, carrying an authority that made even the armored guards stiffen with reverence. Callan couldn't believe what he was hearing, or seeing. Queen Veilra, ruler of the Zentrixian Empire, was unlike anything humanity had ever imagined. Standing at 8 feet tall, her iridescent skin shimmered like liquid crystal, reflecting colors that didn't exist on Earth. Her eyes, large and multifaceted like a dragonfly's, seemed to pierce through Callan's very soul. Long flowing tendrils that might have been hair cascaded down her back, each strand pulsing with bioluminescent patterns. She wore an elaborate ceremonial gown that appeared to be woven from living light itself, shifting and dancing as she moved. What made this moment particularly surreal was that Callan wasn't exactly a distinguished figure among humans. He was just a maintenance technician stationed at the interstellar research outpost orbiting Zentrix 7. His day had started normally enough, fixing a malfunctioning atmospheric processor, arguing with the station's AI about proper tool organization, and trying to ignore the persistent feeling that he'd somehow ended up in the wrong life. Now he found himself standing before one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy, wondering if someone had slipped something into his morning coffee substitute. The chamber itself added to the overwhelming experience. Massive columns spiraled upward, covered in intricate carvings that seemed to tell stories of ancient cosmic battles. The air carried a faint scent of ozone mixed with something sweet and exotic. Possibly the flowers visible through the translucent walls, their petals glowing softly in the dim light. Everything about this place screamed importance, from the precision of the guards' movements to the way the Queen's throne seemed to float above the floor on waves of energy. As Callan tried to process the situation, his mind kept returning to the same question: why him? Of all the humans working in various capacities across the galaxy, why had Queen Veilra singled out an ordinary maintenance worker? The other humans present, diplomats, scientists, military officers, were now watching him with expressions ranging from confusion to barely concealed jealousy. Some were whispering among themselves, while others simply stared, waiting to see what would happen next. Callan's heart pounded against his ribcage like a trapped bird. He could feel sweat beading on his forehead despite the perfectly controlled climate of the chamber. His hands trembled slightly at his sides, and he quickly shoved them into his pockets to hide the evidence of his nerves. This wasn't how first contact scenarios were supposed to go. There should have been protocols, diplomatic procedures, security teams. Instead, here he was, alone in the spotlight, facing an alien queen who apparently wanted him to walk into her private chambers. He glanced around desperately for any sign of help or guidance, but everyone else seemed just as baffled as he was. The Zentrixian guards maintained their perfect formation, weapons holstered but ready, their insectoid features unreadable behind their ceremonial masks. Even the human ambassador, usually quick to intervene in any official matter, stood rooted to the spot, mouth slightly open in shock. Callan realized with growing dread that whatever was happening, he was truly on his own. Queen Veilra tilted her head slightly, studying Callan with those impossible eyes. "Do not fear, human," she said, though her words did little to calm the storm raging inside him. "Your presence here is no accident." She extended one elegant hand toward the entrance to her private chambers, her fingers leaving trails of light in the air. "Step forward. The answers you seek await within." Callan swallowed hard, his throat dry as desert sand. Every instinct screamed at him to run, to find some logical explanation for this bizarre turn of events. But something in the Queen's voice, a melodic quality that seemed to resonate deep within his bones, held him in place. The other humans watched intently, their collective attention pressing down on him like a physical weight. He felt like a character in one of those old science fiction movies he used to watch as a kid, except this time there was no script, no predetermined outcome. Taking a tentative step forward, Callan noticed movement out of the corner of his eye. A small maintenance drone floated nearby, its lights blinking in what almost looked like concern. It had been following him since early morning when he'd performed routine checks on the embassy's systems. The irony wasn't lost on him. Even his own equipment seemed more prepared for extraordinary circumstances than he was. The drone's presence gave him a strange sense of comfort, a reminder of normalcy in this utterly abnormal situation. As he approached the threshold of the Queen's chambers, Callan's mind raced through possibilities. Maybe it was some kind of cultural misunderstanding. Perhaps in Zentriction society, inviting someone to your private quarters was a standard diplomatic gesture. Or maybe he'd accidentally triggered some ancient prophecy or tradition without realizing it. Whatever the reason, one thing was certain. His life was about to change forever, whether he liked it or not. The doors to Queen Veilra's chambers slid open with a sound that reminded Callan of wind chimes caught in a gentle breeze. As he stepped inside, the room transformed around him in ways that defied logic and physics. Walls shimmered and shifted, creating the illusion of infinite space filled with floating galaxies. Crystalline structures grew from the floor and ceiling, pulsating with soft, rhythmic glows that matched the beat of his racing heart. The air carried a subtle vibration, as if the entire chamber was alive and breathing in sync with its occupant. In the center of this cosmic wonderland stood a pedestal, upon which rested an object that made Callan's breath catch in his throat. It was a sphere, roughly the size of a basketball, but composed of what appeared to be liquid light contained within an invisible shell. Streams of color swirled within it, forming patterns that seemed to tell stories. Stories of civilizations rising and falling, of stars being born and dying, of countless lifetimes lived and lost. The sphere pulsed gently, as if responding to Callan's presence. Queen Veilra glided across the chamber, her movements graceful yet commanding. "This," she said, her voice echoing with newfound intensity, "is the Chronosphere. For millennia, our people have guarded it, waiting for one who could unlock its secrets." She paused, studying Callan's reaction. "And now, after all this time, it has chosen you." Callan took an involuntary step backward. "Chosen me? But I'm just a maintenance tech. I fix broken air filters and argue with stubborn robots all day. I don't know anything about ancient artifacts or mystical spheres." The Queen's crystalline laughter filled the chamber. "Precisely why it has chosen you. Your mind is uncluttered by preconceptions, your spirit untouched by political ambition." She gestured toward the sphere. "Watch closely." As Callan focused on the Chronosphere, the swirling patterns began to form coherent images. He saw glimpses of his own life, moments he'd forgotten, dreams he'd never shared with anyone. But more astonishingly, he saw connections between these personal memories and events happening across the galaxy. A childhood fascination with fixing broken toys linked to a distant world where machinery was worshipped as sacred. A chance encounter with a stray cat revealed itself as part of a chain reaction that would eventually save an endangered species on another planet. "This cannot be real," Callan whispered, reaching out instinctively toward the sphere. At the edge of his perception, he noticed something peculiar. The sphere's patterns responded to his emotional state. When he felt doubt, the colors darkened and swirled chaotically. When curiosity took hold, they brightened and formed intricate geometric designs. Queen Veilra moved closer, her presence both comforting and overwhelming. The Chronosphere sees potential, not past achievements. It recognizes in you a unique combination of traits, technical skill paired with genuine compassion, practical knowledge combined with untapped imagination. She placed one delicate hand on the sphere, causing ripples of light to dance across its surface. These are qualities needed to address a crisis that threatens not just our worlds, but the fabric of reality itself. Callan's mind struggled to process everything he was experiencing. The room seemed to pulse with energy, responding to his racing thoughts. The floating galaxies appeared to drift closer, their stars twinkling in encouragement. Even the Queen's otherworldly beauty seemed to shift and change, revealing new facets that challenged his understanding of consciousness and existence. "But why now?" he asked, his voice stronger now, filled with a mixture of wonder and frustration. "Why reveal this to me, of all people, at this particular moment?" The Queen's expression softened, and for the first time, Callan detected something vulnerable beneath her regal demeanor. "Because time grows short, and conventional wisdom has failed us. Our greatest minds, our most advanced technologies, all have proven inadequate against the threat we face. The universe demands fresh perspective, unorthodox thinking." She straightened, her authority returning. "You possess something rare among both our peoples, the ability to see solutions where others see only problems." Suddenly, the chamber's atmosphere shifted. The beautiful, mesmerizing display transformed into something darker, more urgent. Shadows danced across the walls, forming shapes that resembled grasping hands and hungry mouths. The pleasant hum of the room turned discordant, creating an unsettling counterpoint to the Queen's words. "We call it the void corruption," Veilra explained, her voice taking on an edge of fear. "It spreads through the fabric of space-time, consuming reality's whole. Worlds vanish without warning. Civilizations blink out of existence. We've fought it for centuries, but our understanding remains incomplete." She pointed to a section of the Chronosphere, where the swirling patterns had coalesced into a vortex of darkness rimmed with sickly green light. "That is what approaches now. And according to the sphere's prophecies, you hold the key to stopping it." Callan's legs felt weak, and he stumbled back until he found support against one of the crystalline structures. The surface felt warm beneath his touch, vibrating with sympathetic energy. Memories flooded his mind, not just his own, but fragments of others' experiences, glimpses of lives lived and lost across countless worlds. He saw technicians struggling to repair failing systems as their stations crumbled around them. He felt the desperation of scientists racing against time to develop solutions that always came too late. Most disturbingly, he experienced brief flashes of the void corruption itself, a sensation of being stretched infinitely thin while simultaneously compressed beyond endurance. The Queen pressed on, her words growing more urgent. "We've observed your species for generations. Humans possess remarkable adaptability, an unmatched capacity for innovation under pressure. Yet you also carry something more, an inherent connection to the fundamental forces of creation that even you fail to fully comprehend." She gestured to the sphere again, which now displayed overlapping timelines showing different possible futures. In most, entire sectors of the galaxy burned with cold fire. In a few precious strands, however, there was hope, threads of possibility radiating outward from Callan's presence like ripples in a cosmic pond. "But I'm nobody special," Callan protested, though his voice lacked conviction. The sphere's patterns continued to respond to his emotions, now showing detailed examinations of his past decisions. Moments when he'd fixed seemingly impossible problems, times when his quick thinking had saved lives. "I just do my job and try not to cause trouble." "Precisely," Veilra exclaimed, her crystalline features lighting up with sudden understanding. "Your humility, your willingness to serve without seeking recognition. These are the traits that make you uniquely qualified. The Chronosphere doesn't respond to ego or ambition. It seeks pure potential, raw capability untainted by self-interest." She moved closer, her massive eyes locking onto his with intensity. "Do you remember the incident aboard Station Theta 9? The Cascade Failure that nearly destroyed an entire research team?" Callan nodded slowly, recalling the event. A routine maintenance check had turned into a nightmare when multiple systems failed simultaneously. He'd managed to isolate the problem using nothing but basic tools and quick thinking, saving dozens of lives. At the time, he'd chalked it up to luck and good training. "That was no mere coincidence," Veilra revealed. "Our sensors detected an unusual resonance during that event, a harmonic alignment between you and the station's core systems. Similar patterns have appeared throughout your life, whenever you faced seemingly insurmountable challenges." She touched the sphere again, and this time Callan saw clear visualizations of these moments. His brain activity synchronizing with complex machinery, his intuition guiding his hands to precisely the right solutions at precisely the right times. The realization hit him like a thunderclap. All those times he'd thought he was just getting lucky, just doing his job well, they'd been something more. Something fundamentally different. The sphere confirmed it, displaying mathematical models that showed how his actions had created ripples of positive influence far beyond their immediate effects. Lives saved, disasters averted, technological breakthroughs achieved. All connected through threads of probability that converged on him like lines drawn to a central point. "But why now?" he asked again, his voice trembling with newfound understanding. "If this has been building all along, why is the sphere activating now?" Veilra's expression grew somber. "Because the void corruption has reached a critical threshold. It approaches our sector of space with unprecedented speed. The safeguards we've erected are failing, and conventional methods prove ineffective against its advance. The Chronosphere has determined that this moment represents our last opportunity to act, and it has identified you as the necessary catalyst for change." The chamber's atmosphere shifted again, this time filling with a sense of urgency that made Callan's skin prickle. The beautiful, awe-inspiring display transformed into something more purposeful. Diagrams and schematics overlaying the cosmic visuals, showing potential strategies and required actions. The Queen's ceremonial gown shimmered with tactical displays, and even the guards outside could be seen preparing for battle through the chamber's translucent walls. The sphere's activation isn't just a recognition of your abilities, Veilra continued, her voice now carrying the weight of command. It's a call to action. Within the next cycle, we must begin preparations for a mission that will take you far beyond anything you've ever imagined. You'll need to master technologies that make your current understanding seem primitive, forge alliances with species whose very existence challenges human comprehension, and confront dangers that could unravel your mind. Callan felt a surge of panic threatening to overwhelm him, but something else rose to meet it, a spark of determination, fueled by the countless lives depending on him, reflected in the sphere's ever-changing patterns. He thought of all the people he'd helped throughout his career, all the systems he'd repaired, all the problems he'd solved. Maybe he wasn't just a maintenance tech after all. Maybe he was exactly what the universe needed him to be. The chamber erupted into chaos as the Queen's words hung in the air. Guards rushed forward, their ceremonial armor transforming into tactical gear with fluid grace. Through the translucent walls, Callan could see ships descending from the sky, their hulls glittering like obsidian raindrops against the twilight. The Chronosphere pulsed with increasing intensity, its internal patterns shifting from contemplative swirls to urgent, jagged formations that mirrored the growing tension in the room. Protocol Omega has been initiated, Queen Veilra announced, her voice cutting through the mounting turmoil like a blade of crystal. All available resources are to be redirected to Project Horizon immediately. With a wave of her hand, holographic displays sprang to life throughout the chamber, showing real-time data streams and strategic overlays. We have approximately 17 galactic cycles before the void corruption breaches our outer defenses. That leaves us with limited time to prepare our operative. Callan's mind raced as he watched the transformation unfold. Technicians materialized from hidden alcoves, their movements precise and efficient. They began assembling equipment that seemed to defy the laws of physics, devices that folded space around themselves, tools that existed in multiple states simultaneously. The air hummed with the sound of quantum processors spinning up to full capacity, and the temperature dropped noticeably as massive cooling systems engaged. A group of senior advisors entered the chamber, their forms flickering with holographic interfaces. One of them, an elder named Silther with skin like molten gold, approached the Queen. "Your Majesty, the High Council requires your presence." The temporal displacement calculations indicate a window of opportunity opening near the Krylos cluster. He turned to Callan, his multifaceted eyes narrowing. And this, human, must begin immediate conditioning. His biological structure cannot withstand the stresses of dimensional navigation without significant enhancement. Before Callan could process this alarming news, a medical team arrived, carrying equipment that made his skin crawl just looking at it. Needles that seemed to twist in impossible directions, scanners that emitted pulses of light that bent around objects, and vials containing liquids that changed color based on his proximity. The lead medic, a being with skin like polished stone and eyes that glowed with inner fire, began explaining the procedure. "We must accelerate your cellular regeneration, enhance your neural pathways, and integrate quantum stabilizers into your molecular structure," the medic said, its voice a series of harmonics that vibrated in Callan's chest. "Without these modifications, even brief exposure to the dimensional corridors would reduce you to subatomic particles." Callan backed away instinctively, bumping into one of the crystalline structures. To his surprise, it responded by enveloping him in a protective field, its surface rippling like water and projecting calming patterns across his vision. Queen Veilra raised a hand to halt the medical team's approach. "Give him a moment," she commanded, her authority absolute. "Remember, we're dealing with a species that values choice and autonomy." She turned to Callan, her expression combining compassion with steely resolve. "While the enhancements are non-negotiable for your survival, understand that every modification will be reversible once your mission is complete. We respect your humanity, Callan. We're merely borrowing it for a higher purpose." The sphere pulsed again, this time sending forth tendril-like projections that wrapped around Callan's body. Rather than feeling invasive, the contact was oddly comforting, like being embraced by a familiar memory. Through the connection, he received a flood of information, not just about the procedures ahead, but about the scale of what they were facing. Entire star systems reduced to cosmic dust, civilizations wiped from existence in the blink of an eye, and at the heart of it all, a seething mass of anti-reality that defied comprehension. "What about my crew?" Callan asked suddenly, remembering the faces of his colleagues back at the orbital station. "They'll be wondering where I am. There are protocols." "Already handled," interrupted a voice from behind him. Turning, he saw Ambassador Trellick, the human diplomat who had been present during the initial audience. The man looked pale but resolute. "We've established a cover story about urgent repairs on the station's quantum communication array. Your absence won't raise suspicions for at least 72 hours, more than enough time for the initial phase of preparation." The Queen gestured to one of the holographic displays, which zoomed in on a schematic of a vessel unlike anything Callan had ever seen. It looked like a living creature forged from starlight, its form constantly shifting between geometric precision and organic fluidity. "This is the Celestial Dagger, specially designed for dimensional navigation. Its consciousness is partially artificial, partially biological, a hybrid intelligence that will serve as your companion and guide." From the shadows emerged what could only be described as a mechanical wolf, its body constructed from segments of reflective metal that seemed to capture and bend light. Its eyes glowed with intelligence, and when it spoke, its voice carried the weight of ancient knowledge. Designation: Guardian Unit Alpha 1. Assigned to assist and protect Operative Callan during Project Horizon. My capabilities include dimensional shielding, temporal analysis, and combat operations across multiple reality planes. Callan felt his knees weaken again, but this time it wasn't just fear. It was the overwhelming realization of the magnitude of what was being asked of him. The chamber around him buzzed with activity, each movement and decision part of a carefully orchestrated plan that spanned galaxies and dimensions. Through the Chronosphere's connection, he could feel the weight of countless lives resting on his shoulders. Not just human lives, but beings from across the cosmos who had no idea that their survival depended on a simple maintenance technician from Earth. As the preparation teams closed in, Callan took a deep breath and stepped forward. The crystalline structure released him from its protective embrace, and he walked toward the medical team with surprising determination. The Queen watched approvingly as he made his choice, knowing that this moment marked the beginning of a journey that would transform not just one human life, but potentially the fate of the entire universe. Just as the medical team began their work, alarms blared through the chamber, their sound like shattering glass amplified 1,000 times. The translucent walls darkened as defensive shields activated, and Callan felt the ground tremble beneath his feet. Queen Veilra's expression hardened, her iridescent skin flashing with warning patterns that sent the guards scrambling to defensive positions. "Intrusion detected in Sector 12, shouted Silther, his golden form flickering with emergency protocols. "Multiple hostile signatures approaching fast. They've bypassed our outer perimeter defenses." The Chronosphere reacted violently to the threat, its internal patterns twisting into chaotic spirals that reflected the sudden danger. Through its connection with Callan, he experienced a jarring vision. Shadowy figures moving through the palace corridors, their forms distorting reality itself as they advanced. They weren't just enemies, they were manifestations of the void corruption, testing the defenses of the royal palace. "Impossible!" exclaimed the chief security officer, a Zentrixian warrior with chitinous armor that bristled with weapons. "No force should be able to penetrate our quantum barriers without triggering advance warnings." "They've found a weakness," Queen Veilra stated grimly, her voice cutting through the rising panic. "The same temporal instability that allows us to prepare for dimensional travel has created vulnerabilities in our defenses." She turned to Callan, her eyes gleaming with urgent purpose. "This changes nothing about our mission, but it accelerates our timeline. We must secure the Chronosphere and complete your preparation before they breach this chamber." The mechanical wolf, Guardian Unit Alpha 1, positioned itself between Callan and the chamber's entrance, its metallic body rippling with readiness. "Hostile entities detected. Probability of successful defense, 87.3%. Recommend immediate implementation of Contingency Protocol Delta 9. Before anyone could act on this suggestion, the chamber doors exploded inward with a sound like tearing fabric. Through the settling dust and debris, Figures emerged that made Callan's blood run cold. They resembled humanoid shapes, but their bodies seemed to be composed of writhing darkness interspersed with veins of sickly green light. Where their faces should have been, there were only voids filled with stars that shouldn't exist. Each step they took left temporary scars in reality itself, areas where the very fabric of space-time seemed to peel away like burnt paper. "Void walkers," gasped one of the senior advisors, backing away from the advancing threat. "They've manifested directly within our stronghold." Queen Veilra raised both hands, and the air crackled with energy. Runes of power appeared in the air around her, glowing with inner light that pushed back against the encroaching darkness. "Hold your positions. The sanctity of this chamber must be maintained at all costs." The battle erupted with ferocious intensity. Zentriction guards unleashed weapons that fired beams of concentrated reality, attempting to stabilize the areas affected by the Void Walker's presence. The invaders responded by extending tendrils of antimatter that sought to unravel anything they touched. Callan watched in horror as one of the guards was caught by such a tendril. His body didn't just disappear, it unraveled backward through time, leaving behind only a fading echo of his existence. The medical team abandoned their preparations and joined the defense, their healing devices repurposed as weapons that stitched reality back together wherever it tore. Callan found himself pressed against the pedestal holding the Chronosphere, its protective field expanding to encompass him as the battle raged around them. Through their connection, he could feel the artifact's distress. It recognized these creatures as its natural enemy, the embodiment of the corruption threatening all existence. Guardian Unit Alpha-1 launched itself into the fray with terrifying efficiency. Its metallic body flowed like liquid mercury, reforming into optimal shapes for combat. When a Void Walker attempted to strike at Callan, the Guardian Unit intercepted it, its jaws clamping down on the creature's antimatter form. Rather than destroying it, the unit absorbed the darkness, converting it into additional mass that strengthened its own structure. "Operative Callan," the Queen called out over the din of battle, her voice maintaining its regal composure despite the chaos. "The Chronosphere is attempting to stabilize the local space-time continuum. You must maintain physical contact with it to facilitate the process." Callan hesitated, torn between the instinct to flee and the growing awareness that he was somehow integral to this fight. The sphere pulsed urgently beneath his hands, and he felt its power flowing through him. Without conscious thought, he began channeling its energy, directing it toward the weakest points in the chamber's defenses. Wherever the Void Walkers threatened to break through, streams of temporal energy reinforced the barriers, buying precious seconds for the defenders. The Queen joined him at the pedestal, her hands adding their own power to the effort. Together, they formed a triangle of resistance with the Chronosphere at its center. The artifact responded by generating a dome of protection that pushed back against the invaders, forcing them to retreat several meters. But the cost was evident. Both Callan and the Queen were visibly straining under the effort, their connection to the sphere taxing their physical forms. "We can't maintain this indefinitely," the Queen warned through gritted teeth. "The Void Walkers are probing for weaknesses in our temporal signature. If they discover the nature of your connection to the Chronosphere..." She didn't need to finish the sentence. Callan understood the implication. If the enemy realized he was the key to unlocking the sphere's full potential, they would focus all their efforts on eliminating him. Already, he could feel the Void Walkers adjusting their tactics, their attacks becoming more coordinated and targeted. Several of them broke off from the main assault, attempting to flank the defenders and reach the pedestal. Guardian Unit Alpha-1 intercepted these flanking maneuvers with brutal efficiency. Its body had grown larger and more complex, incorporating elements of the Void Walkers it had consumed. The unit's eyes glowed brighter, and its movements became almost predictive, anticipating the enemy's actions before they occurred. Yet even with this advantage, the tide of darkness seemed endless, more Void Walkers emerging from the shadows with each passing moment. Maintaining the protective dome, Callan's mind processed information at an accelerated rate. He saw patterns in the Void Walkers' movements, recognized sequences in their attacks that hinted at underlying programming. The Chronosphere amplified this awareness, allowing him to perceive the battle on multiple levels simultaneously: tactical, temporal, and existential. "Ambassador Trellick," Callan called out suddenly, surprising himself with the authority in his voice. "Coordinate with the medical team. Use the quantum stabilizers intended for my enhancements to reinforce the chamber's temporal integrity." The human diplomat, who had been helping to defend the perimeter, immediately understood the implications. Brilliant! The stabilizers can create localized temporal anchors that will disrupt the Void Walker's ability to manifest. He directed the medics to deploy their equipment strategically around the chamber, creating a network of temporal nodes that began to push back against the invasion. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The Void Walkers faltered, their forms flickering as the stabilized time-space resisted their presence. Queen Veilra seized the opportunity, channeling additional power through Callan and the Chronosphere. The protective dome expanded, forcing the invaders back toward the breached entrance. The Zentriction guards redoubled their efforts, their weapons now finding purchase against the weakened enemy. But just as victory seemed possible, a new threat emerged. The lead Void Walker, larger and more defined than the others, began to solidify its form. Its antimatter composition stabilized into something tangible yet still fundamentally wrong, creating a paradoxical creature that existed simultaneously in multiple states of being. The entity fixed its empty gaze on Callan, and he felt a chill that went beyond mere fear. It was the cold certainty of annihilation, the absolute negation of existence itself. "The Prime Corruptor," Queen Veilra whispered, her voice filled with dread. "It has taken direct interest in our chamber. This changes everything." The battle reached a fever pitch as the Prime Corruptor advanced, its presence warping reality in increasingly dangerous ways. Gravity fluctuated wildly, sending combatants floating momentarily before crashing back to the ground with bone-jarring force. Time itself seemed to stutter, causing movements to appear in stop-motion bursts. Through it all, Callan maintained his connection to the Chronosphere, feeling its power coursing through him like liquid lightning. The Prime Corruptor's arrival triggered a transformation in the other Void Walkers. Their previously chaotic movements became frighteningly coordinated, their attacks more sophisticated and devastating. They began targeting specific structural points in the chamber, attempting to collapse the entire space upon its occupants. The Zentriction architecture, designed to withstand conventional assaults, groaned under the strain of this multi-dimensional warfare. Queen Veilra's regal composure cracked as she faced this new threat. Her crystalline form fractured slightly at the edges, leaking trails of light that sizzled against the corrupted air. "The Prime Corruptor is attempting to anchor itself in our reality," she warned, her voice strained with effort. "If it succeeds, it will tear a permanent rift that neither the Chronosphere nor our combined forces can seal." Callan felt the weight of this revelation like a physical blow. Through the Chronosphere's connection, he perceived the true nature of the Prime Corruptor. It wasn't just a manifestation of the Void corruption, but a seed crystal for its expansion. Each moment it remained in their reality strengthened its hold, spreading contamination that would eventually consume the entire dimension. Guardian Unit Alpha 1, sensing the gravity of the situation, underwent another transformation. Its metallic body began to glow with an inner light that pulsed in time with the Chronosphere's energy. The unit's consciousness expanded, linking with Callan's mind in a way that transcended normal communication. Operative Callan, it transmitted directly into his thoughts. "I can attempt to contain the Prime Corruptor, but it will require merging with its essence. Probability of my survival, 12.4%. However, this action will create a window of opportunity for you to implement a countermeasure." "No!" Callan shouted, the word tearing from his throat with unexpected force. "There has to be another way." "There isn't time for alternatives," the Queen interrupted, her voice carrying both sadness and resolve. "The Guardian understands the sacrifice required. But listen carefully. Its action will create a temporal singularity. You must use the Chronosphere's power to imprint your consciousness upon it. Only then can we hope to contain the corruption." The Guardian unit approached Callan, its form now radiant with purpose. "My existence was always meant to serve this moment. Trust in your connection to the Chronosphere. When the time comes, you will know what to do." With that, it launched itself directly at the Prime Corruptor, its body expanding to envelop the monstrous entity. The resulting explosion of temporal energy staggered everyone in the chamber. Reality itself seemed to fold inward, creating a maelstrom of conflicting possibilities. Through the chaos, Callan maintained his grip on the Chronosphere, feeling its power surging to unprecedented levels. The artifact's patterns now formed a complex lattice that encompassed the entire battle, connecting every participant in a web of causality. Queen Veilra joined him at the pedestal, her hands trembling as she added her strength to his. Now, Callan. Focus your awareness through the sphere. See the connections, understand the relationships between all things in this moment. As he complied, Callan's perception expanded beyond anything he'd experienced before. He saw not just the immediate battle, but the ripple effects of every action taken, every decision made. The Void Walkers' movements became predictable, their patterns of attack laying bare their fundamental weaknesses. More importantly, he saw how his own presence tied everything together, the unwitting fulcrum upon which the fate of this confrontation balanced. The temporal singularity approaches, warned one of the senior advisors, his form flickering with alarm. We must initiate the consciousness imprint immediately. Callan felt the moment when Guardian Unit Alpha 1's containment began to fail. The Prime Corruptor's influence surged, threatening to overwhelm the fragile balance they'd maintained. But within that surge, he perceived an opportunity, a fleeting moment when the corruption's own energy could be redirected against itself. Channel everything through me, he commanded, surprising himself with the authority in his voice. Focus all available power into the Chronosphere, and let me guide it. To their credit, the defenders responded instantly. The Queen poured her remaining strength into the connection, while the surviving technicians redirected every scrap of energy from their equipment. Even the damaged portions of the chamber contributed, their failing systems adding their last gasps of power to the effort. The Chronosphere responded by transforming into a nexus of pure possibility, its surface now a kaleidoscope of potential outcomes. Through this torrent of energy, Callan reached out with his consciousness, weaving a pattern that drew upon every aspect of the battle. He incorporated the Guardian Unit's sacrifice, the Defender's courage, and the Chronosphere's ancient wisdom into a single, coherent response to the threat. The Void Walkers faltered as their connection to the Prime Corruptor weakened, their forms beginning to dissolve under the pressure of reality reasserting itself. But the Prime Corruptor fought back with desperate strength, its antimatter composition destabilizing further as it attempted to anchor itself permanently. Callan felt the strain of maintaining his connection to the Chronosphere become almost unbearable, his body trembling with the effort of containing so much raw power. The Queen, sensing his limits, added her own consciousness to the link, creating a dual channel through which the sphere's energy could flow more efficiently. It's working, called out Ambassador Trellick, who had been monitoring the temporal readings. The corruption spread is slowing, but we need to contain it completely before the Guardian Unit fails. With a final surge of determination, Callan wove the threads of power together, creating a temporal cage that began to shrink around the Prime Corruptor. The entity thrashed against its confinement, releasing waves of destructive energy that threatened to overwhelm the chamber's defenses. But with each contraction of the cage, its influence diminished, its connection to the Void Corruption weakening. The moment of truth arrived when Guardian Unit Alpha 1's containment finally collapsed. Rather than allowing the Prime Corruptor to escape, Callan used the resulting surge of temporal energy to trigger the Chronosphere's ultimate function, a reality reset that would erase the corruption's foothold in their dimension. The sphere pulsed with blinding intensity, its patterns forming a perfect sphere of stability that began to expand outward. Everyone, brace yourselves, Queen Veilra warned, her voice filled with both hope and trepidation. The temporal wave is about to. The chamber erupted in a burst of pure existence, every molecule of air saturated with the fundamental essence of reality itself. When the light faded, the Void Walkers were gone, their corruption erased from the timeline. The Prime Corruptor had been successfully contained within a temporal bubble, isolated from the rest of existence. The chamber's defenders lay scattered, exhausted but alive, while Callan and the Queen remained connected to the Chronosphere, their forms outlined with residual energy. Yet even as the immediate threat receded, Callan knew this was only the beginning. The Chronosphere's patterns now showed countless other instances of void corruption spreading across the galaxy, each one requiring intervention before it could grow strong enough to threaten existence itself. The artifact pulsed with renewed purpose, its connection to Callan stronger than ever, suggesting that his role in this cosmic drama was far from over. As the temporal wave settled and reality stabilized, Callan felt an overwhelming sense of clarity wash over him. The Chronosphere pulsed gently beneath his hands, its energy now calm and reassuring. Queen Veilra stepped back from the pedestal, her iridescent form shimmering with pride as she regarded the human who had just saved her world, and countless others, from annihilation. "You have done more than we could have ever hoped," she said, her melodic voice carrying both gratitude and admiration. "The void corruption has been contained here, but your actions have also revealed something far greater: the potential within you to combat this threat across the cosmos." Callan exhaled deeply, his body trembling from exhaustion but his mind surprisingly clear. Through the lingering connection to the Chronosphere, he saw glimpses of what lay ahead. Not just battles against the void corruption, but alliances forged, civilizations saved, and a journey that would stretch beyond the boundaries of time and space itself. He wasn't just a maintenance technician anymore. He was something more, someone chosen by fate, or perhaps by the universe itself, to stand against the darkness. Guardian Unit Alpha 1 reformed nearby, its metallic body gleaming brighter than before, though it was smaller now, having sacrificed much of its mass in the fight. "Operative Callan," it said, its voice steady despite its diminished state, "I remain operational at 43% capacity. My systems are stable, and I am ready to continue serving you." Callan approached the mechanical wolf, placing a hand on its smooth surface. "You didn't just save us today," he said softly. "You gave everything to give us a chance. Thank you." For a moment, the Guardian's eyes glowed warmer, almost affectionate, before returning to their usual sharp intensity. Queen Veilra gestured for everyone to gather around the Chronosphere. The Zentrixian guards, technicians, and even Ambassador Trellick looked battered but triumphant. The chamber, once a battleground, now felt like a sanctuary, a place where hope had triumphed over despair. "We must act swiftly," the Queen announced, addressing the group. "The containment of the Prime Corruptor is temporary. It will not hold indefinitely. However, thanks to Callan's bravery and the sacrifice of Guardian Unit Alpha 1, we have bought ourselves precious time to prepare for what comes next." She turned to Callan, her multifaceted eyes locking onto his with unwavering focus. "Your role in this mission cannot be understated. You are not merely a participant. You are the catalyst. The Chronosphere has awakened to your presence, and through you, we may yet find a way to eradicate the void corruption entirely." Ambassador Trellick stepped forward, his face pale but resolute. "This changes everything for humanity. If Callan can do this, if he can wield the power of the Chronosphere, we need to ensure Earth knows how vital his role is. This isn't just about Zentrix 7 anymore. It's about every living being in the galaxy." Callan nodded slowly, feeling the weight of responsibility settle onto his shoulders. But instead of fear, he felt determination. The man who had frozen in shock when first summoned into the Queen's chamber was gone. In his place stood someone stronger, wiser, and ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. "The preparations begin immediately," Queen Veilra declared. "Callan, you will undergo the enhancements necessary to survive dimensional travel. We will equip you with knowledge, technology, and allies capable of standing beside you in this fight. And together, we will push back the tide of corruption threatening to consume all existence." Callan glanced at the Chronosphere one last time. Its swirling pattern seemed almost content, as if it recognized the beginning of a new chapter in its ancient purpose. He smiled faintly, realizing that while his life would never be the same, he had found something far greater than routine or normalcy. He had found meaning. "Let's do it," he said firmly, meeting the Queen's gaze without hesitation. "Whatever it takes, wherever it leads, I'm ready." The Queen inclined her head gracefully. "Then let us begin. The galaxy awaits its hero." As the chamber filled with renewed activity, technicians preparing equipment, advisors coordinating plans, and the Queen herself guiding the process, Callan allowed himself a brief moment of reflection. From fixing broken machinery aboard a research station to facing down interdimensional horrors, his journey had taken him farther than he ever thought possible. Yet deep down, he realized that nothing had truly changed about who he was. He was still the same person who believed in solving problems, no matter how impossible they seemed. With Guardian Unit Alpha 1 at his side, the Chronosphere humming with untapped potential, and the support of beings from across the stars, Callan knew he wasn't alone. Whatever trials awaited him, he would face them head-on, armed with courage, ingenuity, and the unshakable belief that even the smallest individual could make a difference. And so, under the twin suns of Zentrix 7, a new alliance was forged. An alliance between humans and aliens, between science and destiny, between hope and action. Together, they would march toward the unknown, united in their resolve to protect the fragile tapestry of existence.